Sarah from the Swanee branch. Welcome to Homeschooling 102, Facing Challenges. I spent 14 years homeschooling 3 boys, and somehow all 3 not only survived, but graduated from high school and are doing well with their next steps. But there were many days when I wasn't sure any of us would survive to the end of the week. Whether it was a matter of keeping up with all my responsibilities, keeping the kids on track, or keeping my sanity when the kids seemed to be trying to drive it away, there were plenty of tough days. Looking back, though, I can definitely say it was worth it, even with all those tough days. And even though they weren't perfect students and I wasn't a perfect teacher. Of course, I remember the difficulties, but the memories that really shine are the sweet moments that I would have missed if my kids had been in school. The stories and nature walks we shared together, the family jokes we still laugh about, the victories, large and small, that we celebrated together. Today, I'd like to talk with you about some of the challenges you may encounter as a homeschooler, because they are real, but I hope to enable you to see past them and overcome them. Because those sweet moments, they're out there for you too, and they make the hard times worth it. If this is your first year of homeschooling, my guess is that now that you've gotten past the thrill or maybe the terror of those first few months, you're starting to run into some frustrations, maybe even some solid brick walls. I want to start out by reassuring you that this is normal. Maybe that doesn't sound very encouraging right now, but you need to understand that you are not alone in experiencing difficulties. I have never met a homeschooling parent who didn't have tough days. So the fact that you're running into frustrations or brick walls does not mean that you're a failure. It just means you and your kids are human. So start by giving yourself and your kids some slack. You're all new at this. So not only is there going to be a learning curve, you're not going to get it right every time. But here's the big secret about homeschooling, and probably a lot of other things as well. It's okay not to get it right every time. Sometimes we learn more from mistakes or failures than from successes. And if you're really seeking to teach your kids how to learn, rather than worrying about whether they can spit out the correct pieces of knowledge on the next test, then any knowledge gaps they uncover down the road won't be a problem. They'll be able to find resources to teach themselves the missing pieces. Isn't that more important than getting a perfect score on a test or always getting straight A's? That being said, there are some key tools that you can use to help you survive and even conquer the mistakes and difficulties you encounter. They are flexibility and support. Think of homeschooling as a backpacking adventure. Each person brings to the journey his or her own unique set of skills and burdens. But everyone who backpacks must have 2 things: shoes and nourishment. Think of flexibility and support as shoes and nourishment for your homeschool journey, and don't leave home without them. Let's start with flexibility, because just as shoes protect and cushion your feet when you encounter rocks and other hazards on the hiking trail, flexibility will help you to bend instead of breaking when you encounter obstacles on the homeschooling trail. It's all too easy to get focused on making the plan work or making sure we've checked all the boxes on the daily schedule. When my family was homeschooling, it seemed that when I focused too much on getting everything done according to plan, my stress level would gradually rise, and that would usually increase my kids' stress too, because I would get fussier with them and more rigid with them than I needed to be. I needed to remind myself frequently to loosen up or look for creative solutions to a problem. And one thing that really helped me to do that was this quote from a friend: "Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape." Just thinking that line made me laugh inside as I imagined an old Gumby toy twisted into some funny position. And that helped me step back from whatever I was being rigid about so that I could get a fresh perspective. And that's a good starting place for dealing with any problem you face. Stepping back, finding something to laugh about, and taking a fresh look at both what is happening and what needs to happen. Maybe my friend's little proverb will help you to do that, or maybe there's something else that will help you relax and bend in a tense or frustrating situation. Take some time to test out a few things and see what works for you. Then make sure you use it anytime you feel that stress level rising. Of course, it's important to have structure for your homeschool. How else can you make sure the kids are learning what they need to learn? But it's also important to hold that structure loosely and be willing to change when you need to change. So when you step back and take that breath, take a little time to really think about what's working and what isn't, about what's important and what isn't. For example, if your second grader is stressing over that rigorous science program you picked out, it's probably time to set it aside and go for a nature walk or show her how to draw that flower in your backyard. Because guess what? In second grade, it doesn't matter what specifics you teach your kids about in science. What matters is whether they're learning to read, write, do basic math, and understand the world they live in. I do have a word of caution about flexibility. As I just said, structure does have value, so if you make too many changes without really thinking through them, your kids won't know which end is up. Constant change leads to confusion, fear, and ultimately an inability to trust your leadership. In addition, it's important that your kids understand that you are the one in charge of their schooling. I know that's not a popular idea, but having a stable, not oppressive authority figure really does help provide kids with a sense of security. Kids need to know where the boundaries are. So as you practice flexibility, make sure you do so in a measured, well-considered way. Communicate with your kids about the reasons for any changes you make, and listen to their perspective when they ask for changes. But make it clear that you are the one in charge of the decisions. Kids who think they rule the roost are much more insecure than those who know they're not the boss, as long as they know the boss is trustworthy. Now, let's talk about support. Just as food and water provide the refreshment and nourishment you need to keep going on a long, rugged backpacking journey, spending time with fellow homeschoolers will nourish and refresh you on your homeschooling journey. I covered some basics on finding various types of support in Homeschooling 101 Part 1, posted back in August. And if you haven't watched that, we have linked it in the description below. If you haven't joined at least one homeschool-related group of some kind yet, preferably one in which you can meet other homeschoolers right there in your area, I strongly encourage you to do so. Support is absolutely critical in times of difficulty and stress. Lone Ranger homeschoolers have to solve all of their problems by themselves, but homeschoolers who find community have access to a host of resources and helpers they can lean on. In my experience, it was helpful and even essential to belong to homeschooling organizations for accountability, encouragement, ideas, resources, and so on. Those organizations really did help me to hold on and stay focused for the long haul. But as helpful as support organizations were, I needed something more. I needed individual friends who knew me well and whom I could trust enough to share my deepest struggles with, as well as friends who were farther along in their homeschooling journey than I was and could mentor me. I had a few very special friends who could fill both roles, and these were the friends I called on when I was at the end of my rope or when things just didn't seem to be working for one child or another. Let's face it, homeschooling is tough. You're on duty 24/7, and if you work outside the home, then you may be doing double duty during your working hours as you deal with both job and family responsibilities. As a homeschooler, you're responsible not only for the care and feeding of your children, but for their education as well. You have decisions to make, standards to meet, discipline to enforce. On top of all that, you love your kids and you want what's best for them. That's a lot of pressure from a lot of different directions, and it really is too much to handle alone. So don't be a Lone Ranger. If you don't have any homeschooling friends, all the more reason to join some kind of local homeschool organization and start reaching out to other members with whom you connect well. Remember that old song, Lean on Me? Put it on your phone, blast it while you're going down the road or cooking supper until those words get in your head and boost your courage to reach out. Because we all do need someone to lean on. That leads me to a word of caution about support. Don't join groups and connect with individuals just to get your needs met. Support needs to be a two-way street, or it won't last. You'll wear others out with your demands and soon find yourself more lonely than before. No, the best way to find true friends is to look for ways to be one yourself. Sure, ask others for a shoulder to lean on when you need it, but be just as quick to offer your own shoulder when you see others in need. Remember what I said about homeschooling being like a backpacking adventure, and that each of us brings a different set of equipment, both skills and burdens, to the journey? This is when you need to bring out those skills. Do you see another mom in your co-op who seems especially burdened with small children? Offer childcare and take the time to listen. Is someone in your support group dealing with a family emergency? Take them a meal or take their kids to sports practice to help provide a link to normalcy. Do you have a special talent like sewing or knitting? Offer to teach it to members of your group, both parents and children. Others need your skills as much as you need theirs. Share them. And one more thing. I said this in Homeschooling 101 Part 1, but I'll say it again here. Don't be afraid to seek out educational consultants or mental health professionals if you're really struggling. They can be a lifeline. Now that we've laid that foundation, let's take a look at some of the problems you may be facing and see how we can apply the tools of flexibility and support. If you have an older student who has been in a public or private school setting for several years, there will be an adjustment period, which some people call deschooling. My oldest had been in public school for 3 years before we started homeschooling. And during that first year, we did have a lot of struggles as he adjusted to having his mom for a teacher and being home with his little brothers all the time. It is a big change in many ways. So it's understandable if your child struggles. It's also understandable if you struggle. But it's an obstacle that can be overcome. So how can you put the tools of flexibility and support to work for you? First, when your child is lashing out at you or refusing to cooperate with your plans, take a Gumby moment. Separate yourself from your child by giving him or her a timeout, an outside break, or reading time, or some other response appropriate to the situation. Then you can take a moment to step back, breathe, look for the humor, and think about what's going on. Is the problem with you or with your child, or both? Don't automatically assume that your child is just being rebellious, but honestly ask yourself if your own unrealistic expectations are contributing to the tension, or if your child has an unspoken expectation that is causing her to act this way. Think about ways that you can bend that would not compromise your authority, but would make it easier for your child to cooperate. You can look online for some ideas too. TheHomeschoolMom.com has a page called All About Deschooling, with plenty of information, ideas, and resources. And hslda.org has a recorded webinar on the topic as well. I've put links to both of these below. Next, take a lean on me moment and look for some support. Seek out other parents you know from your child's former school who are also taking the leap from public or private school to homeschool. And just spend some time comparing notes. Are they seeing some of the same issues, or are there other things that they're up against? Sometimes just knowing that someone else is having similar difficulties is comforting. But you can also give each other ideas and hold each other accountable. Don't stop there, though. It's also important to find homeschoolers who have walked the trail longer than you have, who have already gotten past some of these obstacles, and they can give you perspective, practical help, and tips on things that helped them get through. Even if you're starting out on the homeschooling trail with little ones who have never been in a school setting, you're likely to run into some times when a child seems to be misbehaving or rebelling. Maybe you've told your son 100 times to sit still, but every time you turn around, he's out of his seat. Or you gave your daughter a math worksheet that you know she's able to do, and an hour later, she still has only 2 problems completed. Is it misbehavior or a need to move? Is it refusal to finish an assignment or an inability to focus? Flexibility and support can help you in this situation as well. First, for that Gumby moment, step aside or step outside for a deep breath and remind yourself that it might be your expectations that are the problem here. Then, do some research on what's commonly called learning styles or learning preferences, which are simply a person's typical way of approaching a learning task. You can do your own search or check out some articles I've linked below for a quick introduction to this huge topic. They have some great tips and insights. And if you want to dig deeper, I've also listed a couple of books that I found very helpful when I was homeschooling. The insights you'll find in these articles and books will help you to see how to bend your schooling methods to work with the ways your child learns most naturally instead of working against them. Next, for some lean on me time. Again, you'll want to reach out to both parents who have kids the same age as your kids and to those whose kids are older. Have they dealt with similar issues? And how did they handle them? Spend time with those parents who have dealt with that wiggly or distractible child to observe how they structure their school to accommodate their child's weaknesses and take advantage of their strengths. Another type of support you can find right here at the library is a digital resource called tutor.com, which can provide individual online tutoring sessions in many subjects and grade levels for free. They even provide feedback on papers and help with specific math problems. This is especially helpful for subject areas where you feel unable to help your child progress farther. And there are even resources that can help you learn more about a subject so you can better support your student. But if you find that enlisting tutors and making changes to your approach to school doesn't help your child improve, especially if you find that the child is really struggling to progress in writing, reading, or basic math, it may be time to take support to the next level and seek out an educational psychologist who can evaluate your child for learning disorders such as dyslexia or a processing disorder. The earlier you address problems like this, the better. Well, that's all for Homeschooling 102, Facing Challenges. In this video, I've only given you a brief overview on how flexibility and support can help you get through those challenges. But the reality is that some of the difficulties you face may be very complex. If you want some one-on-one help regarding homeschooling and how the library can support you along the way, you can book a librarian at the Swanee branch. To do that, visit gwinnettpl.org and look for Book a Librarian under the Find It heading. Thank you for joining me today, and I wish you much success and joy as you continue your journey down the homeschooling trail.